Patterneasters. As we were in spooky season, I was inspired by another celebrity knitting pattern from the Bride of Frankenstein, no less, and she was also in a werewolf movie too. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? A further clue, her name may be known to you because of her second husband's fall from grace. Stay tuned to see who we have and what she models on a Weldon knitting pattern. But first, let's set the scene a little bit. With Halloween around the corner, I've been knitting pumpkins, enjoying the autumn tints and enjoying all the spookiness around. Today I'm wearing my me-made inspired pumpkin apron, and I'm also wearing a self-designed bandit cowl, inspired by Sandy by the Lakeside blog, who knitted the Clinton Hill cashmere cowl. So go and check out their design for some luxury. Seemed a great idea to have the benefit of a shawl without it falling off your shoulders, so I wondered if I could make something similar from a single skein of yarn but using crochet and my stash. It did manage to use a single skein of a one-of-a-kind colourway by Stuart Yarns, which has been sitting in my stash for 2 years. And did you know the Dyer Ailey also runs a podcast called Generally Spooky, so go and check that out to get your spook on. I got lots of comments on this cowl when I was making it, because I was crocheting it on a number of train and plane rides over September, and I love the end result. It is a beautiful colourway in this sort of biscuit colour, and it's so drapey. Just remember, if you're inspired to make something similar, that crochet doesn't stretch as much as knitting, so give yourself enough fabric to go over your head before you join in the round. So if I look through my pattern collection, I do find some vintage Christmas sweater patterns, such as these from Weldon's for a his and her reindeer, but not many really inspired by Halloween. Now, that is not really surprising, as it was a single night event on All Hallows Eve, unlike the month-long event nowadays, it seems. So to spend a month or so knitting a sweater with costly wool to only wear for one night a year would be very extravagant. Now, it isn't to say that people didn't have fun dressing up, and maybe they did a quick embroidery pattern onto a sweater, such as this later Peyton's pattern suggests for a cat. But who also remembers the Halloween fun of duking for apples, such as these pictures from the 1920s, or the treacle scones? I must admit, I remember them as treacle pancakes at our parties. Thankfully, no pictures exist of me with my face covered in treacle, as I think the pancakes had a bigger chance of hitting you in the face. But they were delicious fun. Now, Burns also talks about pulling kale to define your future love as a Halloween tradition, and I think the nuts in the fire may have been more common practice in the Scottish tunes. Of course, there was some carving of neeps. Now, this was a long and often painful task, as some of you may remember, but it was certainly kept us busy trying to use a spoon to carve out a neep. And if you've ever had to cook a turnip, you will know how hard they are to cut. So you can see why in recent years we've abandoned the traditional neep to keep the ghouls away and instead turned to the pumpkin. Check out these lesser known Scottish Halloween traditions on the National Trust for Scotland's website. There was guising, of course, too, when you would dress up in costumes. Weldons, who produced those Christmas sweater knitting patterns, also produced paper sewing patterns with many suggestions. Weldons Limited was incorporated in 1898, and by their 5th anniversary in 1903, the AGM reported the paper pattern business, which was separate from their publication business, but a very important part of their trade, had also improved a very substantial manner. This was not because, so far as they knew, there was any great extra demand for paper patterns, but because Weldon's patterns were regarded as the best that were to be obtained. Great self-advertising, as the AGM was reported in the press back then. With hindsight, the success could be because of the brand recognition and cross-selling from their publication business. Another 5 years later, in 1908, when the AGM was held in the Savoy Hotel no less, they reported that Weldon's position as a specialist publisher of fashion magazines, needlework and paper patterns had more than maintained its continuous position of popularity with the public. The company certainly went on to be a key publisher of knitting guides and patterns. As an example of their paper patterns, This catalogue shows the edition for children's fancy dress costumes. Unfortunately, it isn't dated, so it could be from the 1920s or 30s, given the children's hair. But if there are any vintage sewing pattern collectors or sellers out there that know when this is dated from, I would love to hear from you. Did you see at Backroom Finds did an amazing video last year of weird costume sewing patterns, but not sure she had any from here, where you could dress up as a McLean's toothpaste or telephone, landline version of course, or a hot water bottle. Although I know these are not knitting patterns, we'll get to the horror queen later. Can we indulge in some vintage costume inspiration? How some child's memory could be scarred by some of these costumes without them being covered in blood or gore. It's worth noting that history bounding was a thing back then too, with lots of period outfits to try on. Looking at these outfits, they are definitely very much of their day, and certainly include what we would now recognise as some culture appropriation. But I think it's still worth looking at them. So you can see it came with a number of adverts, and that index there shows you all of the ones that were shown, but also a number of patterns that were not illustrated in the book. So clearly Weldons were producing lots of paper patterns for fancy dress outfits. It says, whether the occasion be a birthday or breaking up celebration, Christmas or New Year party, any other festivity, boys and girls, whatever their age, love to go in fancy dress. It's always so much jollier to mingle with bold buccaneers and fluttering fairies when they themselves are gaily disguised than to wear the conventional party attire on such occasions. And paper patterns and any of the designs shown could have been obtained from Weldon's direct for the price of 1 shilling, and the post was free. Here we've got some more period, from pantomime prints to Greek outfits, penguins, Punch from Punch and Judy. On here we have fairies, poppies, roses, mistletoe fairies, holly fairies, bluebells, night fairies, yellow butterflies, blue butterflies, water lilies, a gypsy dancer, butterflies, a folly, a jockey, a French artiste, the work bag, not quite sure where you'd want to go as a work bag, a cottage window, and then the telephone. Some more outfits here, Old King Cole, Empress Josephine and Napoleon, the boy with the nose, no smoking, no drinking, no cigarettes, no parking, a frog and goldfish. And if you didn't want to actually make your own, you could obviously go and use the theatrical tailors and costumers. We've got some Mad Hatter here, and Alice from Alice in Wonderland, a Merry England or Country Girl, a Tabby Cat, Daffodil, Spring Chicken, Busy Bee, a Mouse, a Major General, a Toy Drummer, this Freedom, so that's almost like the boys' no outfit, but for girl that one. We have Puck or Will of the Wisp, Victorian Ladies, a Cracker, that would definitely be for Christmas, and for Americans that don't know of Christmas crackers, that's what we pull on our Christmas table. They come with a little joke, a little hat like she's wearing there, and add to the festivities. They normally come with a treat or a toy. On the centre page we have some very colourful ones here, and not quite sure where you'd want to go as a wash tub either for washing day, but each to their own. Creative anyway. What else have we got? The Wild West, Robin Hood. I was gonna say, who likes the umbrella there that you would wear as an outfit? Interesting. We have rabbits and monkeys, Peter Pan. You can go as a pair of scissors. Some more nursery rhymes here with Red Riding Hood, the wolf, Little Bo Peep, Mary Mary, quite contrary, Queen of Hearts, Knave of Hearts, King of Hearts, Little Miss Muffet. Here we've got some flower fairies by the looks of it, spring, summer, dragonflies, carnations, a moth, Little Miss Shamrock and a mustard seed. And those are the turban dates that, again, the outfits were replicating, and the anchor butters advertising there. Then we go back in time with some medieval princesses and Middle Ancient peasants, Puritan maids, quite a range of historical outfits, and Prince Charming. Then we move forward a bit, an early Victorian gentleman, some more Victorian, maybe even Georgian styles. Nelson even. Looking up Mazawattee Tea, the tea company which in 1898 became the biggest tea company in the world, turned the high duties into amazing advertising campaigns. And in the early 1900s, they even had a carriage drawn by zebras on the streets of London to link their brand of tea with the exotic. So maybe it isn't surprising that the advertising campaigns inspired a fancy dress costume. Let me know in the comments if any of these inspire any last minute costume making for Halloween. Or did you wear any of these patterns even? Now, it isn't to say that there are no vintage knitting patterns out there which we can interpret today with a spooky theme, but they are rare. Like this sweater where you can be covered in skull and crossbones. This is an amazing colourwork pattern called a sailing outfit, no less, and it is for the sweater and the beret. I'm assuming it's from 1950s pattern given the sleeves, the 60 pricing, the black and white photo and the model's makeup. Do you agree? It is from W&G or Wakefield Greenwood & Co. Huddersfield in DK weight wool, and it's pattern number 1123. Unfortunately, the colour work isn't charted. The original colours pictured were actually red, white and blue, so not that spooky and more nautical. But I'm sure if you change the colours you could make it into a very good pirate design. A few other notable mentions before we get to that celebrity pattern are of course spider wools. This is a pattern for babies' crocheted matinee jackets, and it was crocheted in their silk and wool blend called Spider Sweet Rose. It isn't clear if this is a cobweb weight, but given the tension is 6 double crochets, that's the UK terms per inch of course, it certainly suggests this was a lace weight wool. Leaflet number 202 shows on the back that they also had botany wool, which was 3-ply as well, showing this cute panda set with hat and gloves for a 5 to 7-year-old. For viewers in Scotland, they will get the Rabsy Nesbitt reference with his next knitting pattern, which could certainly inspire a Halloween outfit, or maybe you just want to knit that string vest. This was a health vest as advertised on Twiley's pattern. Now, I can't attest to any of the health benefits, but I know they were popular for wearing undershirts to wick away both sweat and trap a warm layer. Of course, that's not how Rabsy Nesbitt wore it, but, choose your Halloween outfits. So I think we've waited long enough. Let's get to the Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. So this pattern from Weldon's leaflet number 607 features Valerie Hobson as the model. This must have been a bit of a coup for Weldons, and certainly suggests that Weldons were doing all they could to maintain that public popularity that they talked about at the 10-year AGM. As you can see, it's for a lacy dressing jacket or bed jacket, as they were also known. So it isn't very scary after all that. It was priced at 3D, so it could be from the 1940s when Valerie would have been known for her Great Expectation roles, or something other than her horror. She had a really successful career with 49 film credits, and in the same year as the Bride of Frankenstein, she also was a leading lady in the first ever feature-length film featuring a werewolf in The Werewolf of London, also from Universal Production, released by Rank. So she was definitely a horror icon that year. However, her career was not typecast, and hence the softer image and the knitting pattern possibly. This pattern supposedly gave you the chance to wear the same outfit as the star and came printed with an autograph. I wonder how popular the leaflet was. The design is a drop stitch, so would presumably keep you cozy for an October evening too, similar to the men's string vest of course. As mentioned in the intro, her second marriage to David Profumo, the Secretary of State for War before his resignation as a result of what became known as the Profumo affair, may mean that is why you have heard of Valerie Hobson. Have you ever heard of her though, from the golden age of cinema? And would you knit this pattern too, so that you too can be the Bride of Frankenstein? I thought I'd show you the yarn that I used to knit the pumpkins that you can see. It's a super cheap commercial yarn at £3, and this is a grey version. It's from the B&M store, so nothing particularly special, but it is a blend of 80% acrylic and 20% wool, and as you can see, it is super bulky. So it's a really quick knit, and also really cheap. Now, which side do you prefer? The wrong side or the right side? And they've been stuffed just with tissue paper just to keep them lightweight and recycle all of those packaging materials. Now, these are little pumpkins and they're knit with a 3x1 rib. So this is actually the reverse side where the purl stitch bumps comes through effectively. Give you a nice little pumpkin, and I've just used some twigs, etc. as the stock on this. This in theory is the right side, where you've got most of the rib and then just the purl going through. Which ones do you prefer? So I hope you have a happy Halloween and you get your spook on. And if you haven't watched my other celebrity knitting pattern video, why don't you go and watch that here?